Well, hello there. It's Rebecca R. Jones, and I want to show you how to draw mountainscapes. There are lots of ways that you can draw mountains. You can go for a much more realistic view. You can go for a much more simple and sort of, I guess, even cartoony style. There's just everything in between. And what I want to do is just get you started with the basics of drawing mountainscapes so that you know what to look for and how to do that. And there are four simple things that you need to know. So, one, you need to know your position, your own personal position. You need to know, two, the lighting position. Three, you need to decide on foreground, middle ground, and background. And four, value. Now, I'm going to explain these four things to you right now. So, your position. When you are drawing something, it's important for you to know where you, as the person, are going to be looking at something. In both of these instances, I'm just looking straight on at what's happening here. And I'm going to show you some images here to show you what I mean. You can see I'm in this photo, I would be somebody standing on the bank here just looking at things from the ground. So the mountains are a little bit higher than me, but I'm level with the ground in this photo. In this one, I would be standing here taking this. In this one, again, standing here. And in many of these, this is the way in which we're going to be looking at this because we're imagining that we're taking this picture and we're drawing a picture of a mountainscape. We're imagining that we're coming at it from that perspective of being on the ground, level with the horizon there, and then everything above it is the mountain kind of towering above us. And it's important for you to know this because, let me see, in this example, I'm actually up on a hill, sort of level with these, and then down here is what I'm looking at here. This is an important thing to just observe. So I'm up in the mountains, and there's some mountains that are lower than me, and some that are higher than me. In this case, I'm really down at the bottom, and this is towering above me, way up at the top. In this instance, this is completely different. I'm at the top of the mountain. I'm looking down. There's just a little bit of rock above me, and I'm looking down into a valley of mountains. In this instance, I'm level with the ground, but I can see a reflection below me, and it matches what's going on above me. And so that idea that I'm at the horizon line taking that photo straight on, this is an important thing to understand because if you were to draw this as if you were straight on, all these mountains would get skewed and they'd be up here, all of that. This may not make sense to you right now while we're looking at it, but it's important for you to think about, where is my position? When you look at a photo, what vantage point am I looking at? Am I looking down into a valley? Am I looking straight on? Or am I looking from the bottom up? And that really gives us some perspective on position. Now let's look at lighting. That's the second thing. Lighting position is important. In this instance, it's really interesting to look at this and take note of where the shadows are. And you can see if the light was coming from over here, there would be no shadow here coming from this because there would be nothing obstructing the view of this. So the light cannot be coming from here. It has to be coming from behind this in order to cast that shadow. Now, if the light was coming from up here, it would be coming down on here and that shadow would not exist, nor would these. But because the sun is coming from over here, that lighting is hitting this with some really nice bright colors, and then it's much darker here, and you can see that shadow casting very specifically on this piece of the mountain. And then you can see the valley has that light behind it. You because this is a different mountain piece than this piece. And here the sun is capturing all of this because the sun is coming from here, and this is only obstructing this section, but this section is not obstructed. Now, this is just an important thing to note. If you want to add a little bit of complexity and go more advanced, then notice that when you put clouds up here, these clouds that are up here and slightly off the picture, they're actually casting a shadow over the top part of this. And now the rock might be a slightly different color too, but fundamentally, we've got some shadowing of the clouds obstructing the view of the sun, but where it's breaking through here, you can see it very brightly on here. This is an important thing to keep track of. You can see it's unobstructed sun all through here. The lighting position is important because it will affect things. So let's look at a few of these just with what you've learned here. So we can see that there is a big shadow right here, and then the sun is unobstructed here. So we know that the sun is coming from right here. That's an important thing to note when drawing something. So in this case, you can see that there's all of this is in the shadow, probably in the shadow of a cloud, because we're up at the top of the sky, and then we can see these little clouds are actually reflected right there with a little bit of a darker spot, and they match that. So we've got a big cloud right over the top of this area here, and then otherwise it's very unobstructed, so we know that the sun is coming from directly above in the middle of the day right over the top of everything, and it's only the clouds that are causing those shadows. In this case, we can see that it's a pretty clear day. There's some clouds around, and it does have an effect on some of these, but generally speaking, you get sections where it's clear, where it's nice and clear, and it's just the little crevices that have that darkest shadow. And then where the snow is, it's very bright and vibrant because the sun is really vibrant against that snow. And here it's a little bit of a warmer color on that snow because we've got some obstructing clouds. So this might seem really crazy, but you can see how simple this is. So don't get lost on me here. Just kind of keep an observant eye as you go through this. And, you know, if you get a really nice look at what happens here, the atmosphere of climate, if you will, the atmosphere in air will actually cause the mountains to look lighter as they go further back. And this gets into what I referred to as foreground, middle ground, background. So we'll have a look at that next. So here, this is our foreground. We've got a little church and a house and some trees. This is our foreground, and it's right in the front. Our middle ground is all of these trees in the middle of our picture, and they are smaller and they're just giving some depth to what we're doing. Then we have the background, and the background is right here. These mountains are in the background in this. If you look at, say, this one, you can see that our foreground is right here. Our middle ground is actually got a mixture of some of the mountain in the front and also a little building here. And then we get into the background, mountains and clouds. And then I want to point to a couple more here. This is a good example. Right here is our foreground. Then we have our middle ground, and lastly our background. Here's an excellent last example. This water in the front is our foreground, and we are sort of, we would say that these are our middle ground, and the background is just barely right here. So depending on your scene, there might be mostly foreground, mostly middle ground, or mostly background. So you want to think about what position you're standing in, what position this perspective is drawn from, the lighting position, where is the sun, and where are the shadows, that sort of thing. And then the foreground, middle ground, background, and lastly, value. Now this is a really easy thing to do if you actually take a photo of something. It'll actually be really handy if you take, say, an iPhone or Android, whatever kind of phone you have, take a photo of your photo, or get a photo that you're going to use, and just make sure it doesn't have any copyright problems, and then so that you're not breaking the law. So get a photo that you are sure is safe for you to use as inspiration, and then go ahead and take that photo, put it in your phone, and just use the edit settings on your phone to turn it to grayscale. Just select grayscale, and if you don't know how to do that, look online to see what your phone, your particular phone, like how to edit a phone photo to grayscale on iPhone such and such, whatever, and see what it tells you how to do it if you don't know how to do it. So turn your photo to grayscale, and then you will notice what I'm about to talk about, which is value. And value is this grayscale value finder cheat sheet that I've got here. Is a great way to understand it. So let's say, for example, that we have this being our first value, the darkest one, and 10 being our widest, lightest one, and it goes all the way around here. Now this is handy because it lets me go in there with this and kind of see where that is. And if you turn this gray, then you'll see what I'm saying. But this all sounds a little complex, but really this is going to be really straightforward in a minute. When I start drawing, it'll all come together. So follow me for a moment. What you want to do is you want to try and have at least 3 values in every single drawing or painting, anything like that. When you do something, you want 3 values. So let's have a look at my own here and see how I did. So we can see that we have our darkest value. It's in color, so it's a little bit more complex than if you just turn it grayscale. Take a photo of something that you've done in your Bible, turn it grayscale, and start to see what I'm talking about here. So let's say that we have our darkest value is right in here, and I would say that it's particularly dark in some areas. We then have a bit of a lighter value in here, kind of a medium color. And lastly, we have that very light color. So we have 3 values in this. And if you want to be real picky about it, you could say 4 because there's some real dark lines right on the very edge. So 3 or 4 values in this. That's not bad. In this instance, we have that very light value of the mountain areas, and then we have that kind of medium area. And then I went in and added some darker value with these words here, and even with the black outlining. So I got myself 3 values in here. Now if you want to really up your game, so to speak, then you want to get somewhere in the range of 5 to 7 values in any painting, but it is really hard to do. And what you want to do as a beginner is shoot for having 3 values. 3 to 5 values is going to be a really fantastic way for you to add some dimension, some contrast, some color into what you're doing. And all you need to do basically is leave yourself some very light value, then have something kind of in the middle somewhere, and then have a real dark value. And that's all there is to it. So as a review before we get going here, where's your position? Where's the lighting position? What's the foreground, middle ground, background? and what's the value that you're going to be using. Which values are you going to go for? This is kind of a finishing thing. This is the stuff you need to think of as we start. So let's get started. First of all, I'm going to get out a paper sketch here, a sketchbook to get started, and I'm going to use something here. I'll use a darker pencil so you can see what I'm doing. Now, you don't have to do this with pencil. You could do this with colored pencil. You could do this with a watercolor pencil. You could do this with painting. You can do this with anything really, but the concept is the same. This is not mountains. This is a zigzag. If we were to put some mountains in between there, we might get some sense of something going on with these. Can you see what I'm doing here? Putting a little snow cap on them. You can totally do this, but it doesn't look very realistic. It doesn't look very honest to real life. What you want to do instead is study what is in the front, what is in the middle, what's behind something. So let's just practice drawing this. So we say that we've got a mountain here. Now I need to figure out if something is in front of this or behind it. If it's in front of it, then I'm going to say go like this. But if it was behind, then that would be wrong. I would need to do this, because now this one, I'm seeing the bottom of this one and not this one. So figure out what's in front and make that line go in front. And now we have the ability to add another one. I'll make it go behind this one, and we'll go up here and through there. Now that's fine, but I feel like this is very one-dimensional, so I'm going to actually take this and go through here, and you can see because I extended that, it now looks a little bit more like this one's behind this one. That's great, but I need to actually have some stuff going on here that looks interesting. Can you see what I'm doing? I'm just trying to add some dimension to this. You pick what this looks like for you. Just make sure that these long things are in front and then they're behind when you want it to be further behind. Now we want to make this have a background, something that is even further behind. Like this goes in front here, this goes behind it, and this one is in front of that one. Now we've got this behind area here, lastly. Now that can go right in here, and we can be as jagged or as smooth as we want. And we can add as many of these sort of cracks and crevices as we want to try and add some dimension to this. We can add a line right here, and if the sun is coming from here, then all of this would get shaded, and we would just come through here and say, yeah, that's all getting shaded. And through here, I don't want you to feel scared to try this out. I want you to be excited to do this. So give it a try on a scrap piece of paper like this, in a sketchbook, something like that. And now if this was watercolor, then I would just be putting a real dark color here, and then as it comes down the mountain here, this section would be a warmer color, that middle color, and then this would be my lightest color because this is closest to the sun. And that way I would get my three values. I would have my darkest right next to the harshest part of the shadow, then I'd have my middle ground, and then where the sun hits, this is where my lightest value is. I hope that this has helped you to get to grips with this a little bit. It's really, really fun and easy. And just to review, you can get some foreground stuff in there as well. And in this case, I'll just go in with something of a line here, and I'll put a pond or a lake right in this area. And I could put some trees in here just to give it some interest. Can you see how straightforward this is? You just need to use a little bit of bravery, get in there and try it out. And soon enough, you'll have something that really makes sense to you. And then you can trace this into your Bible to get you going after you feel comfortable with it, or just draw right into your Bible. And this has been how to draw mountainscapes.